everyone, it's Holly. I'm back and going to show you how to paint an easy tree today. Okay, so we're just going to start with, I'm using the lunar blender again. I've got the 1/4 inch lunar blender made by Princeton, and I'm going to wet the brush first, just tap it off, and we're going to start with a little bit of brown. Okay, so we're going to create that trunk of the tree. So tap it off really well. I don't like to add any water to the paint just because I like it to be nice and vibrant, and I like it when it skips a little bit. So I love things that are a little whimsical. Okay, so I'm using a little bit of burnt umber. Okay, so just grabbing a little bit of that color, and we're going to start with that trunk. Okay, so right in here, you can see I'm creating the trunk, and on this brush, of course, you have the flat of the brush, which is the wider, and then when you turn it on its chisel, okay, so you can do a little bit thinner line. So you can bring those smaller branches up like this. Okay, so I like this brush just because it has a little bit of a bristle hair mixed with that soft hair, so you can get a little bit more texture. Okay, so I'm going to bring my tree down into the ground a little bit. Okay, right in here, and then I'm going to turn my brush on its chisel, and I'm going to bring some branches that come out like this. Okay, so, and you can also use a round brush if you like for that. So if you don't want to use your lunar blender, you can switch to a round. Okay, and I'm just bringing some branches up like this. Okay, so right in here, we can have a couple hanging down maybe. Okay, and you can also add a few later on as well. Okay, so you don't always have to have everything in place before you put the greenery on. Okay, and I'm going to make this a little bit crooked to make it look a little bit more natural. Okay, maybe there's a little branch that's hanging down as well on this side, like so. Okay, and then you can even add a little bit of highlight. Okay, so if you want to take just even a little bit of raw sienna or something, a lighter brown. Okay, usually what I do is I just, again, tap off any excess water, and I'll take a little bit of paint, blend back and forth to get rid of the excess paint, and to kind of evenly distribute it on my brush. And then I'm just going to pull in a few little dashes of color. Okay, kind of scumble it in, just to give it a little bit more interest. Okay, like so. Nothing too fancy, don't think too much. Okay, and then, I mean, if you wanted to, you could even go a little bit brighter. Okay, just kind of in the center, just kind of scribbling that paint in. Okay, I'm gonna rinse out my brush, and then I'm not gonna worry too much about the top, because I'm going to put some green on. Okay, so this is the Princeton Deerfoot. Absolutely love the Deerfoots. Okay, so we're going to be using a couple different colors. I've got, as long as you have like a darker green and a lighter green, you're set. Okay, so we need a little bit of contrast between those colors. So I've got black, evergreen, new leaf, we've got some margarita, and I've also got a little bit of yellow. Okay, so just to kind of show you. Okay, so usually what I do with this brush, you actually pounce with it, which is great. I use it for all my little bears and everything too. Okay, and I'm going to start with a little bit darker color. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of that evergreen, a little bit of black. Okay, and I'm going to start with a little bit of shadowing on our tree. Okay, so I'm going to pounce in, and the thing to remember when you're doing trees is that you want to pounce in kind of clumps. Okay, so like little clumps of that color. Okay, so this is the shadow color, and we're just going to put this on as a base. I know I'm working on a black background, so this isn't going to show up a whole bunch until we put on some more of those highlights. Okay, so right in here, adding that little bit of darker green. Okay, I'm going to wipe my brush clean. I'm not going to actually rinse it out. I'm just going to take a little bit of that evergreen, and now I'm going to start adding some little highlights on top of those clumps. Okay, and you can see some of those little branches still showing. I think that's a big part of it too. When you're doing trees, don't fill up the whole thing. Sometimes you can kind of see some of those branches sort of poking through here and there. Okay, and you want to keep it very loose. Don't press too hard. You're just pouncing nice and light. Don't think too much. Okay, you might want to pick an area and add a little highlight there. And you want some of those little pounces to kind of come up higher than others. So it's looks a little bit more natural instead of just like a little circle. Okay, you want some to be a little bit more irregular. Okay, to look a little more natural. Okay, and you might even want to go out and take a picture of a tree. So it always helps to have something to look at. Okay, when you're doing these, a little reference. Okay. So we've got that sort of base in there, and then basically again, I didn't add any water to the paint. I'm just gonna take, again, these brushes have a toe and a heel. So the toe of the brush is a little bit longer hair. So that's where I usually pick up the paint. And then I pounce a couple times, get rid of the excess, and we're gonna start adding that nice highlight. Okay, so we're gonna pick a couple spots, maybe a couple clumps here and there. Okay. Like so. Got some nice highlights there. Okay, they're really popping on that black background. Okay, so fun. Like that. Okay, and if you find that that's too bright, you can always mix that evergreen with that new leaf and do it a little bit more gradually. Okay, so I've got right in here. Here's our trees coming to life. Okay, I'm just kind of picking a few little spots. Maybe the sun might be hitting those ones. So I'm just kind of highlighting those. Okay, so there's our tree coming like this. And then I'm just gonna pick up another little highlight. So I'm gonna pick up just a little bit of margarita, maybe mix those two together. Okay, I still have some of that darker green even on my brush. Okay, and I'm going to add a little bit more highlight. So you always wanna think about where the light is coming from. So maybe the sun is over here on the right. And I'm gonna add a little bit more of that highlight maybe on the right side. Maybe it's just kind of hitting some of those branches over here. Okay, like that. Okay, and again, I'm still leaving some of those, darker spots, so I'm not covering in the whole thing. And instead of just doing a pounce like here and there, I always do highlight a little clump. So I'm doing lots of little pounces, okay, to kind of give it a little bit more. Okay, like this, maybe a little bit of yellow. Okay, again, I just sort of pick up that paint, little touch of yellow, and you can give it another final little, maybe there's a little bit of sun sort of hitting those. You don't even have to wait for it to dry. You can just sort of pick up like this. Okay, but this is just an idea of how to do those, a nice little deciduous tree. Okay, and you can go back even with your round brush or even a liner brush, and you can add a few more little branches sort of poking through. Sometimes I go back and I'll add, maybe another little branch or two sort of here and there. Maybe they got covered a little bit too much, so you might want to add a couple, which always looks nice. If you add a few more sort of back in like this, maybe just underneath a few of those little clumps that you did, like so. All right. Okay, I hope you liked this little demo. Let me know what you'd like to see next. Okay, you can even add a little bit of grass just by pulling up at the bottom, here and there, like this, like so. All right, I'm Holly. Have a great day.